the InfoWarrior with Jason Bermas. As I wrap up, we can't wish away climate change as Al Gore clings to the rope of lies as he tries to pull himself up as a propped-up leader to save the world from man-bear-pig. Here he is, Al Gore, in all of his glory. And again, you see what they try to do? They try to demonize the whistleblowers, the people that really want the real information out there. Because if this had not leaked, I would still have my, liberal, well-meaning friends telling me, Bermas, you're just so crazy when you talk about climate change not being real. Yeah, right, Bermas, you and your conspiracy theories. Now I just go right to the emails. In a month, I'll be able to point to my film Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, tell them to go check out the Copenhagen climate change section, and the evidence is right there in front of their face. But again, Al Gore and others want to demonize the whistleblowers. Stolen emails from East Anglia. He won't talk about the content of the stolen emails. He won't talk about the content beyond the stolen emails. He won't talk about the source data being dumped so nobody could peer review it. He'll just say it's all real. Pay your carbon credits to Al Gore. All right, let's go right to Bill Gates propagating the same ideals, the same information over at TED 2010. Here's the equation. People are the problem. Reducing our CO2 to zero somehow, even though he admits, we produce something like 5 to 20 tons of CO2 each year. How are we going to get that down to zero? Bill Gates is here to tell us. Hit the clip. Oh, we love you, Bill.
I'm going to talk today about energy and climate. And that might seem a bit surprising because my full-time work at the foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds, about the things that we need to invent and deliver to help the poorest 2 billion live better lives.
Let's stop it right there.
But
vaccines and seeds are going to save the third world. We're going to save the poorest of the poor with Bill Gates, vaccines, and seeds. But now I want to take you into another eugenics direction, folks. I want to talk about carbon dioxide. Hit that clip.
Energy and climate are extremely important to these people. In fact, more important than to anyone else on the planet. The climate getting worse means that many years their crops won't grow. There'll be too much rain, not enough rain. Things will change in ways that their fragile environment simply can't support. And that leads to starvation, it leads to uncertainty, it leads to unrest. So the climate changes will be terrible for them.
Let's stop it right there. This is almost word for word the same thing that Ted Turner said before Charlie Rose, except for that Ted Turner said that we were all going to become cannibals and live in a failed state like Somalia. Let the fear-mongering continue.
So the price of energy is very important to them. In fact, if you could pick just one thing to lower the price of to reduce poverty, by far you would pick energy. Now, the price of energy has come down over time. Advanced civilization is based on advances in energy. The coal revolution fueled the Industrial Revolution, and even in the 1900s, we've seen a very rapid decline in the price of electricity. That's why we have refrigerators, air conditioning. We can make modern materials and do so many things. And so we're in a wonderful situation with electricity in the rich world.
Let's stop it right there. In the rich world, folks, if you didn't have prisonplanet.tv and you didn't see this graph, first of all, it's very deceptive. It shows you from 1900 till modern day, and it spikes down, and then it kind of just waves slowly and still goes down. But the price of electricity in the past 25 years has shot up. It's doubled, if not tripled, in some communities. But Bill Gates ain't telling you about that. He won't tell you about that. That's the economy for the rich. That's the plutonomy we discussed earlier in the program. Let's continue.
But as we make it cheaper, and let's go for making it twice as cheap, we need to meet a new constraint. And that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. And the equation on CO2 is actually a very straightforward one. If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects.
Let's stop it. He puts up CO2, temperature increase, negative effects. Let's start with CO2. There is no evidence that CO2, the life force of plants here on Earth, which we deal with every day in our human lives, causes any kind of temperature increase and then negative effects. So he starts with a false premise. Wait till you see the next equation where people are the problem.
Effects on the weather, perhaps worse, the indirect effects in that the natural ecosystems can't adjust to these rapid changes, and so you get ecosystem collapses. Now, the exact amount of how you map from a certain increase in of CO2 to what temperature will be and where the positive feedbacks are, there's some uncertainty there, but not very much. And there's certainly uncertainty about how bad those effects will be, but they will be extremely bad.
Stop it right there. There is uncertainty about how bad these effects will be, but there will certainly be very bad. So they have no idea what the effects might be because they haven't happened yet, and we haven't had global warming for the past 13 years. That is Bill Jones, Mr. Global Warming. Okay? Bill Jones, Mr. Global Warming, Mr. I thought I was going to kill myself after those emails leaked. Admit it. No climate change, no temperature increase for the last 13 years. And then he gets up here and admits they're uncertain of the effects of the climate change that isn't happening, but it's going to be very bad. Oh, it's going to be so bad. Clip.
The top scientists in this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even
Let me just stop it right there. They have a graph here of CO2 increase from 1855 to 2009, and apparently before 1855, CO2 just didn't exist. Somehow plants were breathing something else. What kind of jackassery, what kind of moron would buy into this? Oh, this is the guy that brought us the Windows operating system. We have to bow down. This is the guy that brought us the Xbox 360. He's getting my nipples hard. I love him so much. Meanwhile, we've got a graph saying there's no CO2 before 1855. Thank you, Bill Gates. Let's continue.
So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services.
There it is. CO2 equals people. People. See, you can't get to zero CO2 if you have people on the earth. Going to be awfully tough to get to that zero marker, Bill, while you're breathing, buddy. So again, CO2 equals people, and then he's going to tell you services per person, then energy, and carbon dioxide. Hit the clip.
Each person's using on average the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero.
Stop it right there. Do you understand what he just said? One of these numbers is going to have to get to zero. Well, since people are the ones using the energy, it seems like the people are going to be the ones going down to zero. Then he reveals himself in the next 90 seconds that somehow vaccinations and healthcare and education are going to reduce the population. Healthcare and quote-unquote vaccinations that are supposed to be good should extend your life. Shouldn't they, Bill? Hit the clip.
Back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population.
And it's funny
to
these people.
The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we
Stop it right there. I want you to bring it back to where it was before. Did you hear that, people?